I'm really excited for this JobStep conversation today with Adam Parsch. Adam and I met over LinkedIn, as one does these days, virtual Zoom coffee chat. And I just thought, wow, you've just got a lot to share with the world. I would love to have you share your insights with job seekers everywhere. Let me introduce myself before we dig in. My name is Eleanor Migota. I'm the CEO and co-founder of JobStep. Our mission is to break down barriers into tech and other growing careers. One of the ways that we do this is by hosting events like this to raise awareness of some of the fastest growing roles into tech, and then more importantly, how to get into them. A little bit about JobStep. We provide the fastest and easiest way to get a better job. We pair the expertise of great job coaches with technology that actually finds and applies to great jobs for you. And then if you are a fit for one of our roles where we've done extraordinary amounts of research, we actually guarantee you a minimum of 5 interviews in 6 weeks. So that's enough about JobStep though. Let's talk about Adam. So let's dig in. So today we're going to talk about how Adam has transitioned from multiple industries, from hospitality into sales, into customer success. And I'm excited to learn from you, Adam, and have others learn from you. You want to kick it off and share a few words about yourself?
Sure, and thank you so much, Eleanor, for having me, the opportunity to be here today. I'm super pumped to be joining all of you on this call on a lovely Thursday afternoon here in Boston. But yeah, just in a nutshell about me, I'm originally a Midwest person and from Michigan, but as Eleanor said, started my background in the hospitality field. That's what I studied at school at Michigan State. Go Green, go Spartans. But I had parlayed that kind of core hospitality experience into property management, into some tech side of sales sort of roles, and then back in the hospitality, and then now into customer success. So super happy to elaborate on my experiences and hopefully can help people out there that are watching today.
Great. Very, very cool. That was a really good overview. So I think let's start with where you are now. So I know you're at A Place for Mom. What does this company do? And I know you're a customer success manager. What does that look like day to day? And for people who don't know what customer success is, you mind sharing a couple words on what that is?
Sure. So I'll give you, I guess, two overviews, one of A Place for Mom and then one of my role at A Place for Mom in customer success. So A Place for Mom is it's an internet listing service or site that helps families find care for their loved ones, whether that be independent living, assisted living, memory care living. We partner with local communities. Well, I say local here in the Boston area for me, but we're a nationwide company. But on the same token, we have a team of advisors that work with families every step of the way to pretty much just help people find care for their loved ones. And then my role as a customer success manager at A Place for Mom is working with my local portfolio of business here in the New England area and their on-site sales and marketing teams to work through best practices, talk strategy on their sales practices to make sure they're more or less winning. And when they're winning, they're helping people. They're helping families find a place to call home. So it's a lot of fun for me because it purely is a support role and a helping role, and a lot of the sales aspects of it are removed. So the stress level has gone way down from previous roles I've had, which is just super fun. But in a nutshell, that's the gist of it.
That's really cool. All right, so it's you. It sounds like you just get to help businesses be more successful, and in turn help their customers and their clients, and I mean,
yeah,
and all day.
I'll even break it down a little further. So if we have a community, saying, Waltham, Massachusetts, that's a senior living community, and they might on any given week, get, 5 to 10 referrals, let's say, of family members looking to potentially place their loved one there. I can kind of sit down with the marketing director there and kind of go through those leads and referrals very specifically and compare notes on what's happening with them and share what I might have internally on our side, that because we have an advisor team that will actually work with the family specifically. And then my job is to work more on the community level. So where I can put the focus more on them to kind of, share notes and help them, capture more of a higher move-in percentage, if that makes sense.
Very cool. Did you have to be a marketing expert in order to jump into this role?
No. And that's the, I guess I could say, the beauty of it, of thinking back to my previous experiences and how it just, they may not, I think nowadays you get so focused on if you look at, I've been in the job hunt, you look at a job description and like, well, no, tech company A, I shouldn't even apply, or I'll apply half-heartedly without even kind of taken a step back and like, well, actually, no, this experience and this experience does apply here. And then kind of shifting your mindset, and not only your mindset, but just how you approach it and network and build your resume in that regard.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what were some of so you didn't have a marketing background, you were in sales before. What were some of the traits that you figured out you could showcase and highlight about your previous experiences to break into this role?
Yeah. Would it help if I actually gave you kind of like a career journey?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go through the whole career journey. Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. So right on. So as I said initially, I started hospitality at Michigan State, go green. And I had thought I wanted to come out of school and get into hotels. That's just what I thought I'd done. I had the restaurant experience. I worked in private golf clubs and just like, you know what? Hotels is something I hadn't touched. Started working for an extended stay hotel in Marriott, Residence Inn by Marriott outside of Chicago. Was only there a year, like exactly a year to the day. It was like boiling point for me. I was like, this is not for me. I need to get out of here. But the unique part about it, it wasn't a traditional hotel that you see like a JW, like something that's overnight, you're in, you're out, business transient travelers or what have you. This was an extended stay. So people are staying for weeks or months at a time. Maybe their home's being built or whatever it might be, right? So that experience allowed me to get into the apartment industry as a leasing agent. So I started working for a local apartment management company outside of Chicago, where I would work on site at a few different apartment communities. And then kind of the same thing is like, while I worked at the front desk of the hotel, there were times I was giving tours of people that were maybe on a business contract or going to be in town for 3 weeks, or their home burnt down and they're building another one. They needed a place for 6 months to stay. So rather than doing that, parlayed it into showing people around for an apartment. So, which could potentially live there for 6 months a year, or God knows how long, but, and then got into some management roles there. Got married out in Chicago. It was lovely and dandy. And then 2014 moved out to the greater Boston area, which is where my wife is from. And that allowed me having the apartment community and property management experience to get into a company called forrent.com, which has now since been acquired by apartments.com, which I'm sure people have heard of. So also an internet listing site, but designed around apartment communities and helping people find homes for an apartment community. So that experience alone really ties in nicely to what I do at A Place for Mom. It's just kind of still learning the senior living industry. The 2 years leading up to A Place for Mom, I was with a small beverage startup out of New Hampshire called Noble Beverages, which was at the time just thought was going to be which was a great experience, but just the pandemic, allowed me to shift my mindset back to something a little more stable in that regard. So I kind of property management, hospitality, but then back into kind of the, I guess, tech internet listing side of things with A Place for Mom.
Wow, it's really cool. I mean, just kind of thinking about it's funny. I was about to say like, what a unique transition, but then I realized it's such a myth to think that we, in this day and age, you start in one career and you stay in it, right? I know very few people who are in the same career that they were in 5 years ago, same industry, same role. Just because things are changing so fast. When you first moved from property management to the first kind of online listing site, how did you make that leap? Was that a hard leap? How did you, one, find the job, and two, in the interview, what skills did you showcase to help convince them that, yeah, absolutely, you could do this role?
Sure. No, it actually in that job, it was a tough transition, not so much of the expertise, I guess, in the field, because it was so relatable, but more in the full sales cycle of an account executive type role. That was more the adjustment, because before, yes, you're in sales, being a leasing agent, working on site of apartment communities, but it's just a different level. You're not going to be in a boardroom, working with marketing directors that oversee 20 properties and and pitching why they should utilize your internet listing site. So it's a lot of the practices of, sales cycle, how you approach things, which I have learned is vastly different across many different industries of sales styles. I mean, you think about the classic car salesman versus, maybe a tech industry company or something else. And the same thing applies to customer success. That's something I discovered on my journey is I had a perception of it's definitely this, but through researching and networking and connecting and just looking at things just a little bit different perspective, it definitely changed.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to dig into that because I think, especially for folks who are coming out of hospitality, they might not be as familiar with different types of sales cycles and definitely for people who aren't in sales or have never done sales, they have a kind of a view of what sales is, and that's very different than the sales you might have done as a kid, running your lemonade stand or working in retail or something. What is sales at a tech company look like? And then kind of digging, you mentioned like before you were in a boardroom, versus for rent.com, you're probably at a desk calling or doing Zoom calls. Yeah. What does it look like?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll break it down on the for rent.com side, I guess first, more on like the tech
Yeah.
side. So, and by the way, like hospitality folks out there, like have a lot of friends in hospitality. There's so much opportunity for people with that experience. So keep your heads held high. We hired a ton of hospitality people ourselves. But as far, and I'm sorry, Eleanor, I just want to make sure I
No,
got
not at all. Yeah, no, that's the point of this call. So
positivity.
we can take that direction too.
No,
Absolutely.
no, no. Sorry, if you don't mind, repeat that question again. I want to make
No,
sure.
no, actually, I think that's a better question. So what were some of the elements from your hospitality experience that um that you highlighted that you felt, okay, this helped me really succeed in sales or really succeed in customer success? Just like, so if someone's thinking about like, well, what is relevant?
Sure.
How would you answer that question for them?
This is a good question. So and I'm going to share a little bit of a story. So when I went to school, to college, I went in undecided. I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. And I just had in the back pocket, I wanted to do business. I come from a small town. Dad was a business owner. Everyone's kind of the town you grow up in, you stay in, you work that one job for your 40 years, you go work down at Ford or GM in Detroit. Like it's what you do, then you retire. That was kind of the mindset I always had. Um, but growing up and going to school and then deciding a hospitality business, I remember opening the academic book or whatever of all the majors, and it just saying like, oh, enjoys connecting with people, chatting with people, puts on a smile, like engaging, genuine, like all these buzzwords really started sticking out to me. I was like, oh, like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to study hospitality business. Like I love engaging with people. I love trying to make people smile, just have a good time. In a nutshell, customer service. The the backbone of, I feel like, my professional life has been customer service and just being a good person. That I think in and of itself, of just trying to do the right thing, trying to do the most genuinely and sincerely right thing, whether it's customer success, sales, any type of roles. I mean, I can tell you that the salespeople that are most successful are the people that are least salesy. They just know how to connect with people. Uh, did I lose you, Eleanor?
Sorry, I'm on mute. One of the things that we talked about in our first conversation uh, is actually that one of the biggest um, learning curves for you is not actually like learning the sales piece, because you had that backbone in customer service and just connecting with people, but it was actually the tech infrastructure and learning the lingo and figuring out all these pieces. Could you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll speak to what I know and had experienced, and with Affordant.com, and now a place for mom is more designed to an internet listing site, but even I could relate it easily to something like Salesforce, just because it's the CRM I'd used before. Um, and while we have components on the back end of our sites that we need to train and help people on, I never saw it as a overly challenging, especially being someone that grew up in the age of computers and them evolving and being just super familiar with it. But I think that's how a lot of us operate that are in this, maybe 30 to 40 age range, 25 to 45, like not super young, but we have that familiarity and kind of the mindset of, well, I'll figure it out. And for me, it was a little challenging, but once you kind of got it down of just taking the time to learn, either it's the software, because there's, especially like Salesforce is a great example, like the components there, and then just being able to train and coach someone on that is super rewarding. But I think patience is probably, to answer your question, it was like, yes, like I'm just someone that thinks like I'll figure it out, just having that mentality, but then the patience to it too, and just making sure I'm giving myself time and not putting too much pressure on myself too. In the same token.
Yeah. Did you have any um did you have any familiarity with the kind of CRMs that you used and for rent kind of in previous experiences? Was it necessary to have that experience to jump in?
So no, I did not actually. So that's another great question. So there's different CRM softwares that are used, just to kind of paint a little bit of a picture. But there might be, so a chain of restaurants might use one certain type of particular CRM, like a golf club might use a different type. But then like for rent, they could use more of a commonality type, right? Like I know it was Salesforce, but it could have easily had been maybe like a HubSpot or a different type of CRM. But the experience wasn't necessary. It's not like it's an overly, yes, it's a very powerful tool, but it's very learnable too if you're willing to kind of put in the legwork and be open to that. And then in addition, like we got into things like Tableau and Power BI as some of the tools as well. In addition to Google Sheets, which we'll all probably have a lot of familiarity with at this stage in the game. But it wasn't a requirement. And just thinking back, and even just thinking back now to my last kind of transition to a place for mom, it was now more than ever with the past 18 months we've gone through as a society is just really wanted to connect with good people, and build just, I can only say it enough, just genuine connections and surround yourself and the team at that kind of that positive attitude, and the rest you can train. So if, I don't want to say if you're a bad person on this call, you might won't get a new job, but it's just like, just do the right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you make it sound really simple. And I guess in some ways it really is. So I guess to kind of summarize, right? So you have started out in hospitality, moved into property management, real estate, and then transitioned that into For Rent, which is a tech company that leveraged your real estate background. You were not super technically savvy. You weren't what someone would call techie. And what you leverage was kind of this background in customer success and customer service, in really connecting with people, being curious, and then also a patience, and you didn't use this word, but the word I hear is just a willingness to learn new technology and say, yeah, okay, I haven't used this particular CRM, content relationship management software, but I've used something similar at Marriott, or I've seen something similar, or I can go on the internet and Google it. I trust in my ability to learn it. It might, and I don't know it today. I don't know it on day one. I don't know it during the interview, but there's a confidence in yourself that, okay, yeah, I can learn this. This is not rocket science. And you weren't, and it sounded like you weren't. Were you intimidated by the amount of tools? You listed a bunch. You listed like Google Sheets and Power BI and Salesforce, and when you got to your first job, whether it's a place for mom or for rent.com, and you saw, and someone was onboarding, you said, yeah, we have these 11 different tools that we use to do our day-to-day work, and they're totally different from what you were doing before. How did you approach that?
I guess I was fortunate, I guess, in both jobs, just to have, there was training set up to help learn them along the way too. And at the time, I probably was intimidated. I honestly can't remember. But to your point on kind of not necessarily having the experience with those tools, I think what helped me through kind of that interview process was knowing or not knowing going into the interview, I was going to be asked about it. But I remember speaking to the relatable experiences that I could get to. While I might not have experience in figuring out a software, I do have experience in setting up my home Wi-Fi router, going over to my in-laws to set up all their technology devices, or whatever it might be related to technology. Writing HTML for a website back in college or something like that. And kind of playing that up as a strong strength of one, you're tech savvy, and you have willingness to learn, like you said.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of people, when they get to the interview, especially if they're thinking about career transitions, their kind of mind shuts down. They only think about their last job and not, well, we are so much more than our jobs. We, like you said, you kind of helped your in-laws, you helped your parents with kind of technology or setting up the Wi-Fi, or in college, you might have, played around with HTML, as you said, and just like different ways of showing scrappiness or showing your ability to learn, or your commitment or your interest in kind of technology related things, that even if you didn't have that opportunity in previous jobs. I think that's a really, really good point. So we talked about that first transition from kind of hospitality, property management, into that first role in tech. I'd love to spend the kind of the next half of our session talking about how you transition from sales to customer success. And so, before we kind of do this, for sales, right? So people get worried about sales for a couple different reasons. One is there, as you said, there's like a salesy, like, oh, I don't want to be the salesy person. And then the other one that people talk to me about is, I don't know if I can handle quotas, and I don't know if I can handle that grind, right? Like the first couple jobs in sales can be a little bit of a grind. What do you say to people from other industries who are thinking, well, should I consider sales, and what do I need to do to be successful in a sales role?
Sure. Loaded question. So, and Doug, thank you for the question. I saw it come through as well. And I would say sales, and I'm no expert on just job types and whatever, but I can speak from my experience in sales and customer success. If you have two different buckets, right? You could have, those little things that, the little Asian thing that you hop into one, and create like a big old toy.
Yeah, the Russian dolls. Yep.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the name of them. So yeah, sales and customer success one. But as you start to open them up, you start to go down these different paths, and what you might think one is or one is not. So on the sales side, I would say to folks who are considering sales or want to know more about sales is, yes, you're going to have more separate from customer success. Is yes, it is a sales job. Your job is going to be to generate sales. Don't let that intimidate you. If I got into sales because I was tired of people telling me, hey, you should get into sales. I think you'd be good at sales. I think you have the personality to be in sales, yada, yada, yada. You're going to have the quotas. And as long as you're comfortable with the product you're pitching, you're passionate about it, you have the confidence to work hard and achieve that quota. And the person hiring you knows if you hit every single quota that they throw at you, they're either going to have to throw a ton of money at you, or you're probably going to look for bigger and better opportunities because you're perfecting your role. And you're probably, if you're that ambitious, you're probably going to look for something else. But in that regard, though, having I lost my train of thought. But
we're talking about being successful in sales.
Yes, and being passionate about the product you're speaking to. So having the confidence to one, speak to it and develop relationships, liking the folks on your team that you're going to be a part of, and then once again, just being passionate about what you're selling. If you're going to go out and sell, walking sticks for people, and you don't like walking sticks, like you're not going to be very successful at it. It just seems like common sense. But and then on the customer success side, Doug, just to kind of hit on your question here, the difference, and this is how I approached it. And the customer success in the same token has a lot of different definitions, right? There's some customer success roles out there that there's still a sales element to it. Like for example, I still have like a quota, a sales quota, and like a base like salary with where I'm at now, but it's not like you're not dealing with the upfront sales cycle stuff. You're purely dealing as once a customer is onboarded and is already a client of yours, maintaining and managing and nurturing that relationship as it goes, rather than full sales cycle. I just think like kind of hunting, signing up, negotiating contract, onboarding, and then also part of the account management piece as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually that's a really good explanation. So if you're dividing sales and customer success, the Russian doll perspective is that there's a lot of similarities between them and kind of unveil them. It's sort of different at every company, but sales is bringing the customer in for the first time. And then customer success is, as you said, kind of working with the customer, handling that relationship, and then figuring out ways that you can, if there's other products or features to sell them on, or kind of getting them to kind of renew the relationship, getting them to do that.
Exactly. And Doug just put a great comment in the chat, kind of acquisition versus retention. And that's really exactly it. And like I said, I can't speak for every company out there because I truly think every company does have it set up and structured a little differently. And there's a great book on customer success out there, and I'm blanking on the name of it. Should have wrote it down before the call. Sorry, Eleanor. But it tells that story though, because so oftentimes, especially with the .com burst in the late 90s, early 2000s, everyone's like, great, sales. And Salesforce is actually an example of this in that book, is they had really taken off. But then it got to a point where the sales plateaued because they started losing customers that no one is paying attention to because they signed them up, and hence blossom customer success. Like, oh wow, like it costs us more money to sign on a new client, rather the same thing in an apartment community. It costs more money to turn a unit rather than renew the person you have at a decent rate. And customer success is someone to really nurture, build on relationships, sell add-ons if you can, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. That brings me to another thing. So you mentioned, right, knowing the cost of converting, of bringing on a new customer versus renewing a customer. How business savvy do you need to be? And is it something that you knew from college and then you just kind of had these instincts for numbers, or is this something that you learned as you kind of grew in your career and so you were able to kind of speak this lingo?
I think it was definitely something I learned as I went through things, seeing it, and I'm sure there's some textbook knowledge I walked away from college with that was just in a dark portion of my brain. But working in the hotel and seeing people checking in and out, and housekeeping function, and doing the invoicing and the AR and the AP, and seeing how the cash flow was happening, and then relating that to the apartment side. And I saw that a lot more firsthand of when someone moves out of an apartment, it's like, great, you need to replace the carpet, you got to repaint it, maintenance has got to do all their check. And at times it could be an easy, flip, but at other times it could be a very, pricey turn.
Yeah. So it sounds like just, being curious about the role and then like thinking about it and saying, oh, wait, like, yeah, no, I'm seeing how these things add up together. I think that probably makes you a really successful customer success rep, where you're thinking about the customer's business and how different costs add up, and how what their goals are. How do you, in your current role as a customer success rep, how do you figure out that information so that you can build these relationships and really help your customers succeed?
Sure. So I like to treat like my book of business as my book of business. Like, it's not a place for moms, it's mine, and I want it to be successful. Yes, on behalf of the company that's paying me to do this work. And I just when I started this role in January, and when I had really started to introduce myself to customers, I wanted to have as much as a connected conversation via Zoom that I could with folks. So that, hey, like, not only tell me about the community, the ins and outs of you, but tell me about you. Tell me about other people on your team. Like, I want to know, I'm not saying I want to know your kids' names or anything like that, but you want to understand all those finer details about the people on their team, their lives, how that specific community operates, so you can understand what makes them tick or is important to them, and in turn shift how I might approach one customer versus another customer. The same thing when it comes to management styles of employees. Like, you try the method of treating everyone the same. Like, you might serve some people, but on the other hand, everyone's different. Everyone has different personalities, and you gotta shift and mold, and be a willingness to learn and adapt as you go.
Yeah. Okay. So this is definitely a theme in your career and a theme in customer success, being able to learn and listen and adapt, and the way that you connect with people is really key, but it's what's allowed you to figure out, okay, how do I solve this problem for my customers?
Right. Nimble as a thimble. I think I'm going to coin that slogan today.
Yeah. Nimble as a thimble. Yeah, definitely. I think this is a good time to pause. Does anyone have any other questions on customer success, sales, transitions? We've covered a lot of topics. Feel free to jump into the chat, and then we'll chat about those questions. I'll give it a couple seconds if someone wants to add questions. Okay, well, I have a question on, so you talked about, you've been in this role for a couple months. What were some of the surprises? You read this book, and probably many others. You networked with lots of people before you made this switch into customer success. You've had, as you said, an expectation of what it was going to be like. What was different from what you thought was going to happen in a customer success role versus what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I got thrown off by Brenda's question in the chat, but sorry, Eleanor, one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, let's do Brenda's question, and then we can get to my question next. I'll
Sure.
remember it.
Sure. Sounds good. So let's see. What did Brenda have to say? How did you learn the vernacular of the industry for the interview? Yes, great question, Brenda. So this actually kind of speaks to just a little bit of kind of the interview process and looking at the job search as a whole. So anytime with a place for mom, I was familiar with the company before I even applied and went through the interview process just from my previous role. But taking the time to research the website, do a little more legwork, trying to just learn some basics of the senior living industry, which is who we cater to. But that was it. Just putting in the time to do a little homework, even before, in a lot of cases, even before you apply for the job. I mean, it's so time consuming. I feel like a lot of times especially if you have a job and you're looking at the end of the workday, you're usually fried. And if you have a family and kids, forget about it. You just got to carve out time at night, if it's 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, to sit down and kind of go all in and do your homework and put your best foot forward. And I think that's a part of it is, if you're going to do something, try and do it at your best that you can do. And that was part of me, Brendan, to answer your question. It's just doing what I can on my own kind of research through, Google, and then LinkedIn was huge, just networking with folks inside and outside of the industry. And if I can leave all of you with anything today, I'd just be network. Don't be afraid to network.
Yeah. When you, this wasn't the question I asked earlier, but kind of jumping on that, did you make any like big faux pas when, because you didn't have a background in senior living, did you use an industry term wrong in an interview and then learn later on? Or were you like, for things where you're like, oh, I'm not exactly sure what this is. How did you approach that in the interview?
Sure. So I was extremely fortunate to interview with a ton of awesome and lovely people. That is one of the huge reasons why I work with a place for mom now. And I have always designed my human interactions, that sounds weird, but my interactions with folks just around mirroring, honestly, is I just naturally, just from growing up, I've always had it in me. So I always try to be mindful of my words and take from the conversation before I give and overshare and speak to something I'm not necessarily knowledgeable about. But I'm sure I did. To answer your question, I'm sure there was something I may have slipped up on or said wrong or what have you in the interview process. And I think as long as you continue on like nothing happened and don't dwell on it, and it's usually would be fine, probably no matter the industry or the role.
Yeah, it's funny, right? I think mirroring is something I only learned about a couple of years ago, but it's one of these really subconscious or unconscious ways to flatter someone and show kind of an in-group is if you notice someone on Zoom kind of leaning in and you also lean in. Like I think I did this kind of subconsciously. You were leaning in, so I leaned in, right? And it just shows like a mutual interest and a mutual kind of connection, even if you're not saying anything. Sometimes it's these implicit things that signal not more than what you're saying, but they add to the conversation, and they can override, especially if you're nervous about your words or you're outside the industry, can probably smooth some of those things out because you are still signaling that you are listening and connecting.
It is so huge, and you can say a lot more without saying anything at all. Just a tidbit on that.
Cool. There's another good question. When you're looking to switch industries and you're not as familiar with a new industry, what are some red flags to watch out for the companies that you could be potentially interviewing with?
The company you could potentially be interviewing with. Good question, Doug. I think for me, it was when I made this last change, I wanted to make sure I was getting into an industry I knew I could be behind and be passionate about. And while it may not necessarily be a red flag there's a manager out there that just, I don't know, whatever, as they're just not a good person. It was me. I knew I didn't want to get sucked down the hole of getting into something that could have been painted as beautiful and great, but no, everyone's there till 10 o'clock at night just because it's the all-in mentality and we're here to win. And I'm not at that stage of my life anymore to be doing that. I have a family and I mean, nothing against those people. I mean, hey, do what you need to do to be successful, sort of thing. But those were kind of the red flags I looked for like, okay, is it designed? Is it a company that says show up at 9, leave at 5? Is it a company that says, hey, I want you to perform as highly as you can and be productive productive, and however you do that, that's completely up to you. Like things like that, of that kind of culture of, hey, don't, work a day a week, but what I mean, it's, work a full week, but kind of do it. You can do it in your own time or do it during normal work hours. That was a big red flag for me of, is it someone that's going to have the expectation of 12-hour days compared to like, nope, like, hey, 40, 50 hours is kind of the norm here. And so that way everyone kind of keeps some sanity.
What were some questions that you asked to suss that out politely in the interview?
Sure. Yeah. It was unique just being in the middle of the pandemic, because everything was Zoom. But even pre-pandemic, thinking back to last roles, it was just the common question of like, great, like what's your expectation of working in the office versus working from home, or working remotely is probably the new word people are going to use rather than from home, because I think if we've learned anything, we can really work from anywhere, if you don't have a physical product you're selling or what have you. But that's how I position it. What's the expectation for this role versus in-office work time versus remote work time?
Yeah, I like that question. What is your expectation? Leaving them as an open-ended question rather than a yes or no question, to give them a chance to extrapolate. Right. And yeah, these are good questions.
I'm an open book. Keep them coming.
Keep them coming. So I want to go back to another question. So my question earlier was, so you'd done all this research on customer success, you'd networked, you'd read that book, you probably read many other articles. How was it's now June, your first 6 months in customer success compared to all the things that you learned about what customer success was actually supposed to be?
And I'm going to look up this book while we're talking about this too, because I want to make sure I leave the name of it with everyone, because it's a great picture. But so it's actually turned out to be different than what I thought, in a very good way. I had been in a sales role and having the full sales cycle, like I said, and then the account management piece. I learned, yes, I could do the sales piece of that role, but I really enjoyed the account management and retention piece a lot more. And I think that is what defines customer success more closely than anything else. So I had that in my mindset of like, great, I'm going to have a book of business that I might be upselling products on, and nurturing and maintaining, and there will still be some sort of sales element to it, and there still is, but in different ways, because it's not tangible products. It's the way our company is set up. It's just you're on the site, and there's no different factors or bells and whistles yet. We're getting there, and I'm sure my role will evolve and change. But that's how I was able to, I guess, parlay into that of. It wasn't made out to be what exactly I had thought, just through seeing other different types of customer success roles, but it's turned out to be very fruitful and something I thoroughly enjoy.
Do you have any specific examples of things you thought for sure, okay, this is going to be like my day-to-day, every day I'm going to do X, Y, or X task, based on what I thought of customer success, and it's not at all the case, or it's now that you are in it, you're like, oh yeah, I can see how you could describe it this way, but actually it's, this.
Sure. Well, I think that was actually something I think that was consistent, at least for this company. And I can't stress it enough. I truly think every company out there has it set up differently. So I'm not allowing myself to get tunnel vision that it's done the same way across the board, but it really, when it comes down to it, it's, really engaging with as many of your customers you can on a daily basis to strengthen your business relationship, whether that's via Zoom or phone calls or face-to-face, depending on how the role is set up. But and speaking to, and obviously leveraging everything you can about your business and your product to get them to be more engaged, in turn, because the stronger that relationship is. In this book, which I'm going to type in the chat, they have a good example in there, is when you have a business kind of business partner, business vendor relationship, right? It's like you have two boats out on the water. And a lot of times there's businesses out there that have a contracted relationship with someone, and then it never, really flourishes. There might be an upper ends of the lake, but you really want to get next to each other and paddle together, with one another to really maximize kind of the effort there. And I thought that was a great analogy.
Yeah. Okay. I like that too. As your goal in customer success is get everyone paddling the same direction next to each other and kind of really working in a partnership. One thing I want to double click on that you said earlier is, today you don't necessarily have the bells and whistles in your current role, but it's something that they're building. I think this is one of the biggest difference of working in tech versus in a larger company, especially in different industries, is that your product that you're representing, the processes that you're working in often change, every quarter, definitely every year. And so that affects your role. So two questions on that. One, how do you keep up to speed with all the changes? And then two, when you switched from property management / hospitality into your first tech role, I guess what was there, how did this kind of constantly changing process, how did that compare to previous jobs? Was there something, a new skill set or character trait that you had to kind of build to adapt to it? Or were you already, were there things from hospitality and property management that had prepared you for this adaptability?
And I think I can answer both of those questions the same way, because it comes down to, I think, an eagerness and a willingness to learn and be extremely flexible. When you might have a job description day one of what the role is going to be, and this can be for any company you work for, but things change. If a pandemic has taught us anything, is things can change on the snap of a dime, and you must be willing to adapt and evolve as a part of that. And in the same sense too, is I try to be someone, and I wish I would have learned this earlier in my career, because I think you can get very content and complacent in a role as well. And that's a very suffering and dangerous thing. And you don't even realize it until it's, you're years in, most likely. And you say to someone hits you with like, hey, is this what you want to do forever type of question? You're like, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. It's, well, how much time has passed? And, and keeping that constant momentum of trying to learn more, do more, be a master in your craft, and kind of having that mindset is what's really kind of helped me in the recent years, especially.
I mean, Adam, I think this is one of the things that really struck me when we first met, is just how humble and open and curious you are. Do you have any, because I think this is as much a practice as it is a personality trait. Do you have any tips for cultivating that, either, professionally? Like, how do you, because there are definitely hard days where you've like, okay, I had a plan. These are the things that I wanted to do. And now engineering has thrown in a totally new technology, or my customer, what are some practices especially for people who are coming out of industries where they have done more of the same thing over and over again? They are looking for growth, but not necessarily have been in as dynamic of an environment.
Sure. For me, it's always come back to like coined like a self quote probably like 20 years ago, just when I was a teenager. It's like, you know what? I think if I can make people smile, I'm doing my job in life. So I always just try to live every day with a smile, with a positive attitude. That, some personal things in my life that I practice that, help with that, of just trying to be very faith-based and positive at all times. Like, yes, like I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have rough days or get upset at times, because I, obviously do. I mean, I'm human, just like anyone else. But just coming back to, I know I'm a better person, and a more productive and a more exciting to be around when I'm in a better mood, or a happy place. So I just strive to just maintain that mindset on a daily basis. And it's tough. And I think, and also too, I started, reading, listening to, audiobooks kind of during the pandemic as well, just about, whether customer success or even like, just like motivating books. There's I out myself as a country music fan, but there's the gentleman by the name of Bobby Bones. He hosts the largest like country music radio station in the U.S. He's on 101.7 in Boston, but he's on American Idol, like he does a new TV show, but he wrote a couple books. And it's a lot of just about your mindset and how you approach things on a day-to-day. And he's someone I really resonate with.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting, right? I think sorry about that, guys. Where was I going with this? Is when you're thinking about your skills, right, for a job, I think a lot of times there's a lot of emphasis on like hard skills, right? Like your ability to code, or do you know HubSpot or Google Analytics, or all these kind of new softwares that are coming out, or, you know, can you do statistics, or all these things, right? But I think given how we talk, one of the themes that comes up a lot is one, you know, the changes you've made in your career, but even in specific jobs, in specific companies, how quickly the roles have changed, and you know, even the titles stay the same, the role, the what you're doing day to day has changed. And it's not just your quote unquote technical or hard skills that matter, but it's also these kind of I don't like the word self management, right? But kind of your personality traits, like what you know, how you approach problems, and how you, whether you are a more flexible person or you're more methodical person, it's these types of things that really determine your success because of how quickly the technology is changing. I think in this call alone, we've probably mentioned 11 different technology tools, and you know, some of them are still in use and some of them aren't. And I think one of the things that I'm definitely taking away from this conversation is part of your success. And I think what others can learn is, you know, don't self-filter yourself because you don't have the technology skill, the hard skill. If you have this openness, and this curiosity and willingness to learn, and a willingness to, you know, there is some hard, obviously there's hard work in it, but this kind of this drive that can get you farther along, even if maybe on paper the first time you write your resume it's not there.
Right. And to add on to your point, I saw Michael typed in a question too, and it's good to see you, Michael. I don't think we officially seen each other face to face, so thank you for the question. But and I've had, just going into a couple of the roles I've had, I'm like, okay, like I'm going to go in, this is the role, just tunnel vision. Like this is what my role is going to be until I get the next role with this company. It's going to be a growth like this, kind of a straight staircase, and not like, well, no, I should be open to things changing and, you know, climbing the stairs this way or that way. As I grow and develop as well. But having that, yeah, the backbone of like being open to that. And because I would get upset at the fact at times things were changing that were out of my control, but why should I be upset about it? Because it's out of my control and there's nothing I can do about it. But Michael's question, yeah, are there specific groups, forums, networking places that you use in your search for a customer success role? So yeah, LinkedIn beat this thing with a dead horse. I just absolutely love LinkedIn. What I started to do was I started to eyeball companies. In my latest search, what was most important to me for my own kind of mental state of mind and well-being was to make sure I'm doing something with a sense of purpose and passion. And I get to help families and senior living communities, like just truly help people, you know, find a place for the loved one. And although the answer to my question I just had, it could have been different things. It could have been different companies, but this is where I landed. And I started to seek out companies with like-minded missions. And what I would do is get on LinkedIn and look up that company. And I would start just looking at the employees that work there. And first I defaulted if there was anyone that was an alumnus of Michigan State, someone that I could reach out to. If there was people that I was connected with, and maybe I shared a connection with Eleanor or someone, then I would help ask that person and leverage to see if I can get an introduction. And yeah, it works 10% of the time, less, probably like 2% of the time, but it's what I had to do. And I just think in big pictures. I wanted to do well. I wanted to find work and create a better environment for not only my professional life but my family. So that was always the motivating factor behind what I had going on.
That's very cool. Yeah, it is. It's actually one of the things that we solve at JobStep is how do you simplify the job search? Because if you do it on your own, like you said, right, it's after you come back from work and then doing this networking. I mean, the amount of work that you did, Adam, is incredible, right? Like you're saying it's 10% of the time that it converts, but you're, you know, on LinkedIn in your free time, trying to find someone, doing the research on companies. It is a lot.
But I mean, but in the same token too, I mean, there's people out there. I was so fortunate and blessed to actually, you know, have a job while I was looking. Given this past year, I feel like I'm in the minority in that group. And for the folks out there looking and still evaluating where they want to head, just don't. It's a cliche, but don't give up. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to pop. You know, there's people out there that are willing to help, and I'm very much a believer, and I know Eleanor is too. It's just, you know, things come full circle in life, and, you know, just try and help one another and do the right thing, and you'll eventually talk to enough people to land that new job.
Absolutely. Perfect. So we're kind of coming up on time. Any last questions from the group before we close out?
And that book, just if everyone is curious, and if you are curious, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can get you the exact title and all that, but it literally is named Customer Success: How Innovative Companies Are Reducing Churn and Growing Recurring Revenue. And it was written by 3 different people about, I think it came out in the mid to the 2010s in there, but I can get you the exact name and a link for anyone interested.
Yeah, great. And we'll also send that. We'll put that in the blog post and the follow-up recap on this conversation.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, and then Michael, I think another, and just for the group, some other customer success groups. There's a couple of customer success forums. If you just Google customer success, they're very active. And then I also recommend a couple of customer success Slack groups. Actually, we mentioned it in another webinar we had on customer success. So I'll try to dig that up and put that in our blog recap as well. So I think to close out, Adam, I think one question that I would end with is, and I think you definitely shared this theme, right? So it's being curious, being active. What is if you could tell your that first year, maybe the 364th day in your merit job, and you were really burnt out, and you're like, this is not for me. And you could tell that person, now, given where you are, about, your career, what's the piece of advice or encouragement you would give that person as they're thinking about where do they go next?
I would tell that person, it's going to be okay. Your career path is not going where you think it is. Be open and be flexible, and strengthen your work ethic at that time. And I came out of college just, ready to roll and blazing, at least thinking I was, and like, oh, I'm working hard, I'm doing this. And just, there's so much. You're 21, 22, 23 years old, 24 years old when you come out of school. Like, there's so much potential to grow and develop. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about just being human and working, it's just, you get to learn so much outside of life, but whatever, how to play golf, like certain things you can just learn and take away so much. And I just learn, just be open to flexibility and just different career options and paths. And as long as you're truly given everything everything you have, like, you're going to come out okay.
Perfect. That's a great way to close. So Adam, thank you so much for taking an hour to chat. I'm going to share my screen really quickly just to share some resources. So if you want to follow the conversation, follow Adam on LinkedIn, follow JobStep. Here is our social. As we mentioned, our mission is to break down barriers into tech and growing careers and make career transitions as easy and simple as possible. And so if you're interested in learning more about JobStep, check us out on our website. What we do, which is really unique, is that we actually want to simplify the process for you. And so we find and apply to jobs for you, guaranteeing you interviews. And then we pair you with great job coaches who help you with interview prep and the resume writing. And a lot of the things that Adam talked about today, of figuring out what your translatable skills are and really leaning into them. We've got a number of at least one other event planned for this summer. And so stay tuned on our Eventbrite to follow us on the socials, and definitely follow Adam. I mean, as you can see, Adam is an incredibly positive person. If you are ever feeling down, definitely following him on LinkedIn is a great way to, be positive, or just remember the good things, or kind of be inspired. I've definitely come away from this conversation really inspired by everything you have to say. I mean, just talking about flexibility and adaptability and being curious, and actually, a lot of people say these things, but to see someone in your career and as that's actually something that has helped you be successful and change direction so many times and be so happy, I think it is really inspirational, because it's not necessarily something you see every day. So thank you so much for your time today, Adam. Thank you, Doug and Michael and Christine and Brenda and Adrian and all these other folks on the call for taking the time to learn from Adam, to join us today. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to help and to chat and help you along your career journey. Perfect. All right.
Thank you, Eleanor, for the opportunity. This is a lot of fun. Yeah, and thank you so much. And what you're doing is awesome. So keep up the great work. I know you're building something great.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Adam. Couldn't do it without supporters like you and who help us get smarter and smarter every day.